all of you. On the behalf of Yashwantrao Muslim Polytechnic, I would like to welcome today's resource person, MD Rehazur Rahman sir. Welcome, sir. In today's second session, the Rahman sir discuss about the application of geopolymer concrete in construction. First of all, I would like to introduce today's resource person. Mr. Razur Rahman sir is working as a scientist at CSIR CPIR Roorkee. Sir completed MTech at Academy of Scientific and Innovation Research, Roorkee, in a building, engineering and disaster management. Sir have probably specialized in a concrete technology, construction material, structural engineering, new and alternate building materials. He had published nine number of international journal, conference and book chapters. Now I would like to request Rahman sir to start the today's session.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Now I will share my screen and then I will start my talk. So let me try. I think the slides are visible now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So I am very thankful to the Bhansali Polytechnic Institute for inviting me for this talk, and the topic that has been chosen by this institute is the innovation in concrete. And nowadays we know that the civil engineering, the construction that is going on, concrete is the integral part of it, and day by day there is improvement in the technology, so one has to be updated with the recent developments, and there are various different alternatives that are being developed. So one of that development is geopolymer concrete. So I will focus my talk on the applications of this geopolymer concrete in construction. So my presentation will be outlined in the fashion like shown here. I will discuss about the background of geopolymer, and then what are the geopolymer basics, like how it is made, and what are the basic chemistry related things that are associated with geopolymer, and what are the research and developments that has been carried at our institute, at Central Building Research Institute, and then what are the products that has been developed. And one of the implementation projects that we took was of construction of a geopolymer concrete pavement that I will elaborate in some way, and then other applications that has taken place in some other part of this institute. So what are the challenges associated with these applications, that I will also discuss in the end. So first, when we see at this, the demand of cement is day by day increasing, and it is expected that in India by 2025, this demand will increase to 600 million metric tons, and the capita demand will be 415 kg metric ton per year. And there is a immense pressure on the cement industry to meet this demand, but we know that there are limitations of reserves that are available for limestones and the raw materials that are required for the production of this cement. So and also there is a limited growth possibility of cement industries, and there is also environmental issues related associated with it. So we have to look for some alternative to meet the demand that is growing with the development of infrastructure in the country and the worldwide. So these are some alternative cementitious binders like calcium aluminate cement, calcium sulfoaluminate cements, alkali activated binders, super sulfated cements, and carbon negative cements. These are the various alternatives, but these alternatives also have some drawbacks with them. So, like in case of calcium aluminate cement, and the strength loss on the conversion of metastable to stable hydrates is there. So there is a loss of strength. And in case of calcium sulfoaluminate cement, it has some expensive nature. So there will be deterioration with the age. And the alkali activated binders, there are challenges related to rheology, that is workability in the field. And with the super sulfated cement, it has slow strength gain properties, and the durability is not proven for carbon negative cements. So these alternative cements are not coming into the market because of some of the drawbacks associated with this. And we day by day some improvement is going in each of these alternative cements. And the alkali activated binder now has improved very fastly, and now in the form of geopolymer it is getting day of light, going to come into the market. So when we look at the historical development of this alkali activated binders, it started with the in 40s by a researcher named Porden, and he has worked on the alkali activation of slags. And after that, in 50s, Glovsky studied identified the crystalline zeolites that are based on calcium silicate hydrates. And these zeolites are the crystalline materials, and they have less reactivity. In alkali activation, there are two forms: the amorphous and crystalline phases. The crystalline phases are not that reactive, but amorphous phases are much reactive. So he studied the crystalline zeolites made from the alkali activation of slags. And then in 60s, there was studies on the metakaolin based amorphous zeolites. And during 70s, there was a famous scientist named Davidovits, and he studied the alkali activation of low calcium binders. And he gave a name to those binders as geopolymers. And after that, there was a development of waste containment related to geopolymer cements. And in last 2 decades, there was a study on geopolymer concretes and fire resistance coatings made from these geopolymers. So what are these geopolymers? As the name suggests, it is a polymer, and here the monomer is a silate structure, and silate is nothing but it is a silicon oxide and aluminum oxide linkage. So these geopolymers are the amorphous materials that are formed by alkaline activation of amorphous aluminosilicate precursors, and there can be different form of these geopolymers. And depending upon the molar ratio of silicon oxide and aluminum oxide, it could be polysilate monomers, repeating units, where the silicon oxide and aluminum oxides are in the linking chain that is repeated in the system. And when the molar ratio of silicon oxide and aluminum oxide is 2, then it is polysilate siloxo, where the linking units is SiO, ALO, and SiO bonding. This is the chain, the chain that is repeated in each polymer unit. And with silicon SiAl ratio of 3, it is polysilate disiloxo. The main constituents of geopolymer are aluminosilicates, that could be fly ash, metakaolin.
वो लेक्चरच कैसे चालू करते हैं? हाँ, घेतलाय मी लॅपटॉप.
I think there is some disturbance from somewhere. Okay. I think someone has unmuted. I will request the person to mute himself so that I can continue. Okay, now I think it is okay now. So the main constituents of geopolymer is aluminosilicate, and that is consists of fly ash and GGBS or metakaolin or mine tailings. Basically, these are the materials that provide the alumina and that are rich in alumina and silicate or their combinations. And another is the alkaline activators that could be hydroxide, silicates, or carbonates. And these are alkali hydroxides, and it could be of potassium based or sodium based. And some admixtures are also used to control the workability and setting time of these geopolymers. So the synthesis of geopolymer is shown in this slide. So when this is aluminosilicate source materials, that is fly ash or GGBS, they have silica oxide and aluminum oxide. So when it is mixed with these activators, then the first phase starts, that is dissolution stage starts. And in this dissolution stage, the hard core surface of these precursors are corroded, and this give to a release of silicon oxide and aluminum oxide tetrahedral units. And after dissolution, there is reorientation of these molecules to make a gel-like structure, which then goes into the polycondensation phase, where the water is ejected out, and then polymerization takes place and the hardening of this material occurs. And then we get a solid materials in the form of like whatever cubes or structures we want, we can have get the products. So for getting geopolymer, there are different criteria that should meet, otherwise geopolymer will not be formed. So the first is source materials should be highly amorphous, because if it is not amorphous, then it will have low reactivity and the product formation will be very less, and as such the final strength properties that will be achieving will be very of low standards. And the optimum silica and alumina ratio should be achieved, and it is dependent upon the application. What are the applications that we are targeting? Depending upon that, silicon and aluminum ratio should be optimized, and that for concrete it should be 2, and for brick making it should be 1. And for high temperature applications, the silica should be higher and more than 3. And the rate of release of alumina should be adequate, because if aluminas are not released from the precursors, then the monomers will not be properly formed, and then geopolymers will be not formed. And there should be presence of reactive glass content. And from the XRD study, if we do a X-ray diffraction micrograph we obtained, then in that there should be presence of hump in the at an angle of 2 theta of 15 to 30 degree, and that will signify that it has a amorphous nature, and then it will lead to a geopolymer formation. And the water demand of these materials should be low. So there are different advantages associated with geopolymer, and one of them is cement-free construction. So here in this, we are not at all using cement. There is only the fly ash or some other industrial byproducts that is used, and this way it leads to more sustainability. It has higher strength, and the strength could be achieved up to 100 and more. And when we go for a high temperature curing, it can be achieved within 24 hours also. It has negligible shrinkage, and it has very low permeability, and this low permeability also lead to the low deterioration of these materials. And especially in the aggressive environments like that of in the case of chloride or sulfate environment, these geopolymers are very effective, and they are performing much better than the ordinary concrete. And we can control the setting time and hardening properties of the materials, and it has also low thermal conductivity. So when we go for a building that we require to have a low thermal comfort zone inside the house, then the geopolymer is a good material. And it has also a good fire resistance properties, and it is found that it is even stable at a temperature of 800 degrees centigrades. And it has a negligible CO2 emissions. But in case of that cement concrete, there is every ton of cement production, it is reported that it produces about 0.8 to 1 ton of cement for each cement production, cement production. And there is no water curing required when we manufacture geopolymers. Here the cement differences between the cement and geopolymers has been shown. So you can see that the energy requirement for cement production for 1 ton of cement, it is around roughly around 3500 megajoules, but in case of geopolymer it is only 990 megajoules. And for, as I already mentioned, that CO2 emission in case of cement is roughly around 1 tons, but now with the use of supplementary cementitious materials and some modification in the manufacturing process, this has been reduced to up to 0.8 also. And in case of geopolymer, it is only 0.15 to 0.2 tons per ton production of geopolymer. And the main binding phase that is formed in the case of cement, it is calcium silicate hydrate phase is formed. But in case of geopolymer, it is sodium aluminum silicate hydrate phase is there. And these are the binding phases that provide strength to the both materials. And in case of cements, we need water curing, but geopolymers need no water curing, and we can put it in the ambient environment temperature and it will gain its strength. But when we require a early strength, then it can be put into the oven, and then after 24 hours we can achieve the strength. So only the curing is required is for temperature curing or environment curing. No water curing is required. And workability for cement is handled up to 30 minutes in the normal case, but with the use of admixtures it can be increased. And in similarly in geopolymer concretes, it can have a handling property up to 2 hours. The cement concretes, the fire resistance is very low. At a temperature of 200 to 300, the spalling takes place. But these geopolymers are found to be stable up to a temperature of 600 and even up to 800 degrees centigrade. The thermal conductivity of geopolymer is also less, and the chemical resistance of geopolymer is higher, while in case of cement it is low. The various products and applications for this geopolymer has been carried out, and I have shown here some of the products that has been developed, like bricks, blocks, some coating materials have been developed, and tiles has been made. Some precast members can be made, and one of the property of this geopolymer is immobilization of toxic waste can be done. So I will explain these products in later slides. So at CS at CBRI, we carried out a systematic study, and we started research on geopolymer around 5-7 years back. And at that time, the geopolymer was made by heat curing only. So we targeted for a ambient cured geopolymer concrete, and in that project, we could develop a ambient cured geopolymer concrete. Later on, geopolymer concrete insulation and insulating concretes were developed. Bricks and solid blocks were made, lightweight blocks were made, and for the structural application of geopolymer, reinforced geopolymer concretes were also tested. And we also developed self-compacting geopolymer concrete, and precast elements have also been developed. And from these studies and projects that we have taken, we have filed patents, and we have also a technology transfer for the activators that is used for geopolymer production has been transferred to an industry. And we have done some publications and demonstration products. So for geopolymer concrete, first part is paste state. That when there is only binder is there. So for geopolymer, we have to characterize the material that is we are going to use for production of geopolymer, and there could be different materials, and depending upon the material, there could be different concentration of silicon oxide or aluminum oxide. So when we talk about metakaolin, it has about 84% of amorphous phase present in it. And this paste has been found that it can be manufactured consistently with predictable properties. So there is not much problem when we produce geopolymer related to making using metakaolin. And but it has been found that it is less durable, and at elevated temperature is required for the curing. Otherwise, it does not get its strength. Similarly, in case of fly ash, there is 55% of amorphous phase present, and quartz is about 20%. And this combination of silica and alumina should be there. There is also one other class of cement, so fly ash, in which there is calcium content of more than 10%. So there are class C fly ash and class F fly ash, and depend it is ASTM classification, but in our Indian standard it is siliceous fly ash or calcareous fly ash. So for geopolymer, siliceous fly ash is found to be suitable, and in case of fly ash there is complex structure and the properties are highly variable because it changes from source to source. The fly ash changes, and also from the same source, if we are taking the chemical if the coal that has been used in the thermal power plant changes, then the properties of fly ash also changes. And but the fly ash is used when for geopolymer production, then we get a material that is more durable and stronger. But even in this case of geopolymer, elevated temperature curing is required. Otherwise, we have to mix with some calcium-rich compound like slag to get the strength properties. And another industrial byproduct is slag that is used, GGBS we call it in general, and it has a amorphous phase content of 73%, and properties are highly variable in this case also. But in here, it is more durable, and it can be cured in ambient temperature. We don't not require any elevated temperature curing in case of slags. There are various strength influencing parameters, and some of them are listed here. So first is water to geopolymer solid ratio. So when we make activators, then we mix hydroxides with water, and then we get a solutions. So what in that activator there is water as well as the solid part present, and as well as from the precursor materials. But this water to solid ratio has to be optimized so that we could achieve the optimum strength. And alkaline liquid to solid ratio, to achieve the proper workability, this ratio should be optimized. And the ratio of silicate to hydrates, when we use activators, then we are mixing hydroxide with the silicates, so this ratio should also be optimized depending upon the material that we are using. So every time if the source material is changing, then it should be optimized for each mix. Then molar concentration of activators. So sodium hydroxide that we are using, it could be of different concentrations, and this concentration has to be optimized for the available material. And then we can go further for the castings. And mixing time, if we have to give a proper mixing, adequate mixing time, so that the activators that are there could react with the silicon and alumina source, that is a fly ash or precursor materials, so that there is proper reaction taking place. Curing temperature and curing time should also be optimized. When we are going for high temperature curing, then the curing time should be less, otherwise it will lead to some other degradation in its strength, and curing time should also be optimized based on the other parameters. In the previous slide, I talked about the concentration of sodium hydroxide. So here I have put a result from one study where this compressive strength had been optimized with the activator concentrations, and here you can see from 5 to 25 molar concentration has been trialed, and in this study it was found that about 18 molar concentration the highest strength is achieved. But when we go for its implementation, this sodium hydroxide has a coercive effect on the skins. So these concentrations should be brought to a lower level, so that it becomes more workable and working site friendly. So in general, it should be not more than 12 molar or 14 molars. So generally people use between 8 to 12 molar concentrations, and then it is optimized accordingly. So when we have optimized these properties in the paste, then we go for geopolymer concrete. Here only in concrete only the binder part is changed. Only in case of cement we are using the geopolymer binder, which will be geopolymer solids of fly ash or slag and alkali activator. Other things are similar, like aggregates and water and admixtures, and then these are mixed and then casted and cured to get a geopolymer concrete product. So here the compressive strength of fly ash slag geopolymer concrete is shown in compressive strength with increase with time, and it can be seen that there is increase up to 14 days, and thereafter the strength gain is was insignificant. and this is probably due to little progress in activation reaction. And you can see that the geopolymer concrete gained almost 75% of its strength at 7 days, and 95% of strength was gained in 14 days. And after that, there was not much increase in strength. And this has also been studied in relation to the existing guideline of ACI, which has given a predicting formula where the A1 and B1 are the two constants, which values are 4 and 0.85 defined for cement concrete. And we can see that in the initial stage, from 0 to up to 28 days, we can see that it is so that geopolymer strengths are more than that of OPC concrete. But at the later age, the cement concrete is still gaining strength, because with time the hydration reaction continues. But in case of geopolymer, all the reaction takes place within 28 days or 14 days, and then and hence we have more strength in case of geopolymer. And this is a scanning electron micrograph image where the geopolymer concrete, you can see there is a dense interface between the aggregate part and the matrix part, and there is no cracking visible. But when we see that in case of OPC concrete, there is a porous structures present. And in case of sodium, in case of geopolymer, there is a sodium aluminosilicate hydrate gel present, but in case of OPC, there is calcium silicate hydrate and calcium hydroxide is present as a reaction product, and some whites were also present in case of OPC. So when we come to engineering properties, the stress strain diagram becomes important. And as a civil engineer, we know that the elastic properties is very important for any construction or any material. So when we see at the elastic properties of geopolymer, it was found that the elastic modulus of geopolymer is less than that of normal concrete. And but it has a more deflection properties. We can see that the peak load is achieved in case of cement concrete is about 0.2 strain, but in case of geopolymer it was 0.3. This shows that for the that it has more deflection properties, and it will be more helpful in those cases where energy absorption properties are required for a structure. And more in case of earthquake resistance properties, resisting the earthquake, these materials will be more good. And the drying shrinkage of concrete is a critical parameter for long-term serviceability of concrete structures, and it has been studied. And here we have shown the comparison of GPC, geopolymer concrete, with normal concrete, and it is found that the geopolymer concrete has a drying shrinkage strain of 100 microstrains, while in case of OPC it is around 400 microstrains. So you see that there is a low shrinkage in case of geopolymer. And when we are going for a thermal curing, then these strains are even negligible. And another property is alkali aggregate reaction, because in geopolymer we are using alkaline materials, so there is a chances of alkali aggregate reaction taking place, which is expensive in nature, and that thereby it can be deteriorative to it. So there is a very it is required that this geopolymer should be alkali aggregate reaction should be studied. And the mortar properties from siliceous aggregates and the geopolymer at a liquid ratio of 0.47 using ASTM methods has been studied, and it was found that there is no much expansion in case of geopolymer, and different combinations of fly ash and slag were tried, and it was found that when we have a combination of fly ash and slag of 20% slag and 80% fly ash, there was a good geopolymer obtained. And the crystalline zeolite precipitated into the pre-existing voids caused to no stresses. And this is the durability study in the aggressive environment of acid and sulfate. And we can see that there was a strength loss of about 18% after 120 days. And there was a mass loss of 0.5% in case of H2SO4. And when we study it in the form of sodium hydroxide, sodium sulfate and magnesium sulfate, then magnesium sulfate has been found to have a more deteriorating effect than the sodium sulfate. And in case of sodium sulfate, there was a mass gain of about 1.6%, and in case of magnesium sulfate, there was a mass gain of 1.37%. And we know that the concrete exhibit better fire resistant properties when compared to steel and other construction materials. But the new era high strength concrete does not possess the same level of fire resistance when exposed to elevated temperature. So as a result, spalling of concrete cross sections occur when exposed to fire, and thereby the reinforcement gets exposed, and which drastically reduces the strength and stiffness of the structures. So there is very important that these properties in the presence of fire should be studied. And here you can see that the compressive strength properties has been studied up to a temperature of 800 degrees centigrade. And when it was visually observed, that then there was change in the color progressively with the increase of temperature. And this color change was maybe due to the presence of the iron oxide present in fly ash, and this changes with respect to temperature. And the maximum weight loss in geopolymer concrete cubes when subjected to elevated temperature was approximately 4% up to 800 degrees centigrade. And this is mainly because of the dehydration and dehydroxylation of the evaporation of water from the cubes. And when we look at the compressive strength properties, it was found that the compressive strength of concrete increased up to 400 degrees centigrade, because when we are putting it under high temperature, then the curing of inside concrete is taking place in case of geopolymer, and which lead to the increase in its strength. And after that, there was decrease in the strength. And the reduction was approximately about 28.8% up to 800 degrees centigrade. And the strength loss was mainly due to the difference in the thermal expansion of geopolymer paste and the aggregate phase. And the bond strength bonding between the geopolymer concrete and steel has been also observed. And we can see here that the highest increase in the bond stress over that of control was about 6.2% at 400 degrees centigrade, and above 400 bond stress decreases with increase in temperature. And at 800 degrees centigrade, a decrease in bond strength of 68% was observed after exposure of 60 minutes. And this is mainly because of the chemical adhesions and frictions between the parts of concretes get reduced with increase in temperature. And for the structural applications, we need to study the reinforcement properties of a beam under load deflection curve. So when we compare the geopolymer concrete beams behavior with that of PC, it was found that they have identical behavior. That is, initially they have a elastic stage followed by yielding, and then they goes to plastic stage. And but in case of geopolymer, it has a higher load carrying capacity than the cement concrete. And but the failure that is taking place in case of geopolymer was a little bit non-ductile. It was a brittle kind of failure, but in case of geopolymer, it is a ductile kind of failure. So here some building products that has been developed at our institutes has been shown. So some bricks, solid blocks, hollow blocks in concrete, and aerated blocks has been developed, and I will show one by one. So this is the manufactured using a CBRI developed machines which can be installed in a very one entrepreneur can take take up these machines and can establish a small factory for production of cement bricks. So this we have to optimize the sand and the geopolymer binder combinations depending upon the strength properties that we want to achieve. It could be a lightweight brick or a pressed bricks, and we can achieve a strength up to 10 MPa or 15 MPa at 28 days. And water absorption was observed to be only 8% in case of geopolymers. And some solid and hollow blocks of different sizes were developed at the same as, and some machines that has been used are also developed by CBRI, and this technology available with CBRI. Then geopolymer foams are used for insulation purpose, and here the densities can be varied from 0.8 to 1.2 gram per centimeter cubes. And it was found that in case of geopolymer, the uniformity of pore distribution was there, and the dimensional stability was also achieved. And these geopolymer foams are suitable for use in sandwich construction, for wall panels or roof panels, or also for some coating material as a coating material. And self-compacting geopolymer were also developed, and what are the design guidelines requirement for IFNARC has been used, and we could achieve the workability like slump flow of 650 to 750 mm, and a V funnel time of 8 to 11 seconds, and a J-ring of 7 to 9 mm. And also the segregation resistance has been also found to be less than 15%. And the strength that we could achieve in one of the project was 25 to 30 MPa, and slump retention was more than 1.5 hours. And this geopolymer concrete, when after optimization, it was taken up to a pilot scale trial levels, and then using the normal construction material, construction equipments, this has been pumped to about 100-meter distance using the concrete pump. Here one batching plant, mini batching plant has been used for concrete mixing, and then it was poured into the this pump, and then it was pumped to the columns for castings. And these are the columns you can see here, and these were casted using self-compacting and this pumpable geopolymer concrete. And we have conducted some non-destructive testings to assess its strength properties. And from the rebound hammer test, we could find a strength of 80 MPa, and the ultrasonic pulse velocity test was carried out, and it was around 3500 to 4500 meter per second. And this signifies that the concrete is very uniform. Next recent development in geopolymer is precast fabrication, and one we have tried with this partial prefabrication system. Here one prefabrication system, that is plank and joist system, is shown. These planks are casted, and then joist and precast panels in the form of slabs, small slabs which can be lifted by two men are casted, and then joists in the form of beams are casted, and then they are placed on walls, and then a trimmy concreting is carried over it, and then it is finished to get a partial prefabrication system. The beauty of this system is that there is no requirement of any formwork for the casting of slabs, and thereby we can have a cost saving in the case of the construction of buildings. So this is the at a lab level we have carried out the casting of geopolymer reinforced concrete planks of a size of 1.5 meters and a width of 300 mm, and it has a thickness of 60 mm. And similarly, the geopolymer concrete joists were casted, and it was vibrated with some reinforcement. And this is in case of partial prefabrication, there is two tests is critical. One is deflection recovery test, and another is failure load test. So deflection recovery test were carried out at a loading for whatever loading that is will be required for service life period, which is around 4.5 kilonewton per meter square, and that was applied, and it was compared with that of cement concrete. And in case of cement concrete, we can see that there was a less deflection, and in case of geopolymer concrete, there was more deflection observed, and thereby we can see that it has more energy absorbing properties. And this is the failure load test. Here also you can see that the strength properties of geopolymer and cement concrete are similar, but only the difference is in the deflections. So even for the same strength, the concrete in geopolymer concrete will be deflecting more, and thereby we have a longer time for in case some load increases there, we have a longer time to evacuate any structures. This is the failure rate test of this RC joists, that is beam. And here also you can see that the behavior is similar, but the geopolymer concrete has a peak strength achieved at a larger deflection. And deflection at failure was around 190 in case of cement concrete, while in case of geopolymer it was 198. This is the failure pattern shown here. You can see that there is crushing of strength in case of cement concrete in the compression zone. Crushing is there, and there is flexure cracks taking place in the center portion. While in case of geopolymer, you can see that there is a distributed crack in the whole of the beam. That's why it is absorbing more energy and giving more deflections. So now come to the implementation part. We have taken 2 demonstration projects with National Thermal Power Corporation, NTPC, and in one project we made a geopolymer road in our campus at CBRI Roorkee of 50 meter, and in another demonstration there was a 100-meter road was made inside the plant of NTPC at Dadri near New Delhi. So this is the construction process. First, we have to prepare the subbase. Subbase, that is the bottom part. Actually, when we did a casting here in CBRI, there was existing road, so we have to chip it off, and we have to then compact it using a mini vibrator. And there was some solder provisions that should be provided in case of pavement. So some solders were made, and it was compacted using the aggregates in the subbase layers. After the preparation of subbase layer, the activators were prepared, and activator were procured in a tank. Because it was a large construction, we required a huge amount of activators, so it was directly taken from a supplier, and that is Kiran Globals. They are the good supplier of this alkali silicates. And then these silicates should have a Na2O to SiO2 ratio of 1.2, and these activators were mixed with sodium hydroxide solutions, and then it was used for construction. So first, the DLC layer, that is dry lean concrete layer, is made, which is the subbase layer. Earlier was the subgrade, and this is the subbase layer of concrete, of geopolymer concrete. First, the mixing is carried out in the mini batching plant, and then it is poured. It is a dry lean concrete, so it should be compacted by a plate vibrator. Needle vibrator will not work here. And you can see that this is the finished DLC layers. After DLC layer is casted, then a separation layer according to the provision of IRC guideline is provided, and it is nothing but a polythene layer which is of thickness 125 micrometer thickness. And after that, the PQC layer, that is pavement quality concrete, is laid. First, the mixing is carried out, dry mixing is carried out, and then the activators are added, and some shrink controlling agents were added. Then the mixed were poured and spread on the DLC over separation layer, and then leveling of then vibration was done, and then leveling was carried out. As geopolymer is a new materials, and there is not much study on the properties. So in order to get the properties in the exact environment in the application stage, we also carried out some instrumentations for some sensors to study the properties, and the two sensors were used. One is temperature sensor and the other is the load sensors were installed. And you can see here, these are the double bars. Double bars actually plays the role of transferring the stress from one slab to another slab. So some stress cells were kept below the cell, so to see the efficiency of load transfer in the pavement. And temperature sensors were installed at the three levels, in the bottom level, middle, and at the top, to see the temperature changes that is taking place inside the concrete when it is under operation. And it has been controlled digitally at a control center using a data loggers. After the PQC layer is casted, then these slabs has to be cut up to certain depth, and these are poured with sealants. So 90 mm groups of size 3 to 4 mm is made through the diamond cutter, and the slabs were made of a length of 4.5 meters. And this is the expansion joints. And then a 25 mm depth of size 10 mm is made for existing 3.4. We have to make a 3.4 mm up to 90, and then again we have to expand this 3.4 mm thickness to 10 mm up to a depth of 25 mm, so that we can, in the bottom part there will be, you can see here, the top part is much wider, that is of around 25 mm, but bottom part is here 3.3 to 4 mm. So in the bottom part there is a backup rod, which is a thermocol in the form of, you can see in the next slide. This is the backup rod that is placed inside in the bottom part, so that the sealants is there on the top, so that it can have a separation properties between the two slabs. And then the filling of these pores, these cut joints were done with the sealants. And these sealants are polysulfide sealants, and it has been used as per the Indian standard guidelines. And this is the final geopolymer rods that has been made at CBRI. It is of 50-meter length, and various dignitaries from NTPCs and from CSIR headquarters visited this, and this is our team, you can see here. Some performance properties were also evaluated, like the core strength of these geopolymer rods. Pores were cut from these geopolymers, and it has been tested, and in situ density has been determined, and pavement thickness has also to be ascertained, because if pavement thickness is not met properly, then it will deteriorate with time, because if we are designing it for a certain load capacity, axle load capacity, then it should have a desired thickness. Otherwise it will not have a load carrying property up to that extent. The surface leveling was also determined, and the alignment of joints and alignment of the oil bars should be accurate. And texture depth, the top surface of the pavement are textured properly, so that it should have a proper gripping properties, otherwise the vehicles could skid. And in the next implementation project, this is at the end, the thermal power plant site at Dadri, and here DLC of layer was DLC drying concrete were poured, and then it was compacted using a vibro compactor. As per the Ministry of Road guidelines, the drying concrete should be compacted using a vibro compactor. And here we gone for the actual conditions that are required for construction of normal concrete. We have done similar things for geopolymer concretes, and this you can see the finished DLC layer in the plant site. And after that, there was a separation layer was put, and then pavement quality concrete pouring was done, and it was surface leveling was done. So with the experience at CBRI, we faced so many different problems we faced, and then we could overcome those difficulties in another implementation, and we could do this implementation in much easier manner when we are doing it for the second time at the site. So with the time we get experience, and now we are very easily geopolymer are implemented in different plants. And after this, this is the finished road you can see. And after these products, this NTPC has taken up it at multiple, at Ramagundam also they have constructed a about 2 kilometer road, and in the Netra campus at Greater Noida they have again constructed 2.5 kilometer peripheral road inside their campus. So now this geopolymer is going into the application in the field after these trials. And based on this construction of these two roads in 2018 April, this Indian Road Congress has accredited this geopolymer concrete as a new material that can be used for the construction of geopolymer roads. And it has been widely covered in the media, and that Netra and CSI have developed geopolymer concrete road, and it is multiplying with time. And now, after facing some problems at site, it was seen that if we could make a geopolymer panels in the factory conditions and then install it on site, then it will be much easier. So now we are moving towards a precast concrete pavement, and now it is very initial stage. We have not done any implementation work. So now we are going to have a research in this direction. And because it has several advantages, we can have a better concrete quality, and because it eliminates the problem like quality of fresh concrete, and at site operation of pavement equipments and uniformity in placing it. There is enhancement in the curing conditions, and we can control the environment at precast plants, but at site we cannot control it, so it is better. So, and there is minimal weather resistance. Even in the cold weather condition, if we have a precast panels, we can do a pavement construction. Also, in the case of light rainfalls, we can do it. But if we are doing it in a in situ construction, then it is very difficult to do a pavement construction in those conditions. And also there is a less traffic restrictions. We can do the castings, and we can do the installation of the cast pavements when there is at the night, and when there is low peak traffic is there, and we can immediately open the traffic also. And there is elimination of construction related early age failures that in case of happens in case of general construction. And the issue related to late or shallow sowing do not develop, because after cutting, after PQC layer is laid, there is we should have a saw cutting of the grooves, that is shown you in earlier slides, that there should be a cutting of slabs. We have provided a joint expansion joints, but it should be done at optimum time. But in this precast pavement construction, there is no issue related to that. And these are the applications that I have shown was in our country. There are other countries also done a lot of work in this area, and I will talk about some other applications that have taken around the world. So here is one example of Milton Library. This library is a recent example of precast geopolymer concrete construction. It is made of 40 MPa geopolymer concrete, and it was designed for a high strength, which encompasses a floor space of 3,500 meters square, and it is spread over 2 floors. And in this construction, 35 precast panels of 9-meter length of geoconcrete were installed as a exterior facade of the building. And precast footpath has also been made in Australia, and there is a company named GeoBond which developed a concrete at a commercial level, and they named it as a e-concrete. And it is nothing but it's a combination of fly ash and slag with alkali activators, but they have named it as a e-concrete, that is environmental concrete. And life cycle analysis of this concrete shows that there is a reduction of about 80% CO2 emission. And when it's compared with the concrete products from these two binders, that is geopolymer and cement, then it is shown that there is about 60% reduction in CO2 emissions. And this e-concrete has also been used to make the retaining walls for the bridges and some other locations. And another example is of a structural building construction is a building of Queensland University of Queensland. It was made by a Wagner Group. Is a company. They have developed a concrete that is they call it as a environmental earth friendly concrete, EFC they call it. And here they have made 3 large floor beams and that form 3 suspended floors plates of this new global change institutes they have made. And you can see that they have a batching plant installed in the Brisbane, and these panels were casted there and then brought to sites and then installed. You can see the inside view of these panels that has been installed in this building. And another this is also the construction made by Wagner company, and it is a aircraft pavement they have made, and it is West Brisbane Wellcamp Airport, and it has turning nodes of about 16,000 meters square, and the thickness of slabs that has been casted there is of 435 and apron and and area of 2,500 meters square were covered using this geopolymer concrete. Used geopolymer concrete at a larger extent. Then another geopolymer implementation has been done in the fabrication of tunnel segments, and here it is a factory in Malaysia where fiber earth friendly concrete of low slump is used to make the tunnel segments. You can see in these figures here. And this the company made a life cycle study, and they found that there is a good environmental performance of these materials. And this earth friendly concrete, that is nothing but a geopolymer concrete, has 80 to 90% reduction in CO2 emission. And because we are using a recycled material like fly ash and slag, which is an industrial byproduct from the thermal power plant or steel industry or an industry. And with the grade of strength, these emissions could further be reduced. So for 1 m³ geopolymer of strength 25 MPa, there was a saving of 154 kg of CO2. And when we go for a 40 MPa concrete, then there will be a saving of 220 kg of CO2. So there are various challenges associated with the implementation of this geopolymer, and I will explain one by one. So as we can see that the various research has been carried out, and various implementation projects at least at a pilot level has been done. But even after so much of studies, it is not seeing day of the light because there are various problems associated with it. And first one is variability in constituent raw materials and its sources. Both quality and quantity of material required vary from place to place, and as a result, the geopolymer concrete properties differs with same constituent material. Even we are using the same constituent, that is fly ash if you are using, or slag you are using, or its combination. Even if we are using the same thing, but their constituent property changes if we are changing the source. So the quality of materials will change. Even if we are taking a quality from a single source, and most critically, consistency of quality also changes. Apart from the aluminosilicate precursor source, it is also necessary to get alkaline activators from a stable manufacturer that is having a robust supply chain and for the continuous source of long time period. And proper sourcing of constituent raw material is essential for the timely return on investment made in the setting of the facilities. Because if timely return is not there, no one will like to establish any industries for this. So this is one challenge. Many things that if some manufacturing unit or production unit is established, and if they are not getting it returns in due course of time, so people face dilemma that if even if some factory is established, if they are not getting proper profits, then they will not go for it. So it is very much needed. Second is monitoring of quality control and quality assurance. The most important and challenging stage in the production of geopolymer concrete is its quality control and maintaining the desired quality and properties. The manpower involved in manufacturing and placing of cement concrete are well versed with the quality control procedure and testing methods. Because cement is continuously used from last 50 years or more than that, so everyone knows how to control it. But those manpowers, when work with geopolymer, they are not well versed with this system. So there is a need for knowledge spread about the control and management of raw material associated with the geopolymer production, so that there is uniformity in uniformity of input material and consistent quality. And the skilled persons and techniques should be made sincere about the development and quality of geopolymer products on the process of complete production and consistency of the constituent raw materials, because the chemistry of this material is entirely different from the conventional clinker process that is used in case of OPC concrete. And thirdly, it is the performance of geopolymer concrete in long term is not established yet. Although much of the studies have been done, but in the case of actual conditions, it is not available. The main issue in establishing a standard of performance assessment of geopolymer concrete is the acceptance of accelerated testing methods and data evaluation process. The durability test methods are mostly the accelerated methods, and that are based on the concept of chemistry of solutions that are there filled up in the pores of cement concrete. So those tests may not be applicable for geopolymer concrete. So there is a need for a development of methods that are more suitable as per the geopolymer. And the cost economics is also very vital. So geopolymer materials has been reported to produce about 80% less CO2 than OPC. Therefore, or if taxation on CO2 emission or other pollution-related financial charges are applied at a local or global scale effectively, then the cost of geopolymer material could be economized properly. The cost of production of geopolymer using raw materials such as fly ash, slag, and alkali activator may be lowered than OPC clinkers production if carbon taxation is imposed. So what are the benefits? So that's we should explore. And the consumer and client acceptance is also a challenge. So the geopolymer has several advantages and potential to replace the conventional cement. And these benefits can be seen after the utilization of this material on a large scale and creating awareness among the consumers and the user agencies, so that it becomes more and more acceptable to the customers. And the customers should be presented with the facts and convinced about the opportunities with the use of geopolymer material, like better performance and threat like CO2 emissions, resource depletion associated with the conventional materials, and education about the production product to the stakeholders and the government agencies and the local bodies for removing the misconception associated with the geopolymer products is also required. It helps in building confidence about the product advantages, which will further spread to customers for bringing awareness about the technology and the product. And finally, the specification and standard guidelines should be made. So actually, even in any project, if some product has to be implemented, then it should be present in the standard guidelines or a schedule of rates or schedule of any state government or central government schedule rate should be present. So there should be some guideline. The use of the new biomaterial for any application required to be certified from an accredited institute, and for its utilization of such materials at large scale and for acceptance in the commercial market, it is essential that there is a specific standard and certification available for their quality and usage. And for preparing a standard for a new material, there is need to reach consensus among different stakeholders. And the standardization committee consisting of certification and agency has to be established, and the aim of this committee should be to develop a standard for materials which guarantee the product quality and its performance. And the geopolymer technology benefit to the society as a customer and a supplier as a commercial investor can be suitably met through its proper specifications and standardizations. And in India also there is a committee named, which is working on the development of this guideline, and CED 50 Civil Engineering Department 53, which is going to develop. There is a draft circulation is available from Bureau of Indian Standards, and this is under circulation, and very soon we will have a geopolymer code available with us. But this code is mainly focused on use of geopolymer only for the precast products. So let us see when we have it circulated, and then it will be available for general purpose use for geopolymer. Thank you for the listening patiently. And if anyone have any questions, they can ask me, and I will be happy to answer them.
Hello. Sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Shetty sir asked how the sensor works under loading.
Actually, sensors in that there is this strain gauge. The strain gauges are installed in it, and when there is loading, those strain gauges will give the readings in the form of the whatever deflection is there in the material that is present there, it will show the deflections, and then those depending upon the earlier this calibration carried out on that material, that will show the how much load is coming over that. So that way, these load sensors that is installed in the road, they will give the load transfer, how much load is transferred when vehicle is passing from one slab to another slab. I hope that is answered the question.
Hello, sir. But where the sensor is placed in concrete pavement at location?
It was placed at the near the dowel bars. Dowel bars were installed between two slabs, and at the lower portion below the